I'm totally hooked on Reels. It is so addictive that when I do have it on my phone, when I do download it on my phone, I can easily drop an hour without blinking. I mean, if I've got nothing else to do, if I had nothing else to do, I'm sure I could spend all day going through Reels. It's so entertaining. It goes up and down, you're frustrated at watching something and then something else makes you cry with laughter. It's constantly changing. It's like you've got all the entertainment you could ever want at your fingertips. It's literally there in your pocket. When I was younger, I guess I had a similar sort of outlook on how I would play video games. I could have easily spent all night after school up competing, playing these really fast paced, intense games that make me so frustrated on one hand and so happy when I would win on the other. I'm just a really competitive person. I guess they were really active in the sense that I had to control the person I was in the game. But sitting on my phone, scrolling through Reels or TikTok or, shorts, whatever it is that you do, doesn't feel as involved. It doesn't feel as proactive. It doesn't feel like I have agency over it. I think when you take a step back and look at what those things are, I mean, social media generally is a really good way to connect with people, expand your reach. I mean, what I'm doing now is that via YouTube, but there are also some drawbacks for certain personalities. If you can't control how much time you're spending on these extremely entertaining platforms, you might risk missing out on other aspects of your life. It's the same with everything. If you commit fully to a sport, you might miss other aspects of your life. You might neglect relationships, for example. But again, this feels less like I'm making a decision. It feels like you're hooked. Now, I'm an adult. I have a job. I have responsibilities. I have places I need to be. And there are things that I enjoy and people that I enjoy being around that mean that I guess the systems that I've put in place, and that's really maybe a too formal way of saying it, but the life that I have prevents me, whether or not I've engineered it to or not, from spending my life on a screen. But I was quite lucky, I think. And I think, I know people my age that have screen times in excess of 10 hours a day. I mean, extrapolate that over the long term and how much of your life will be spent watching others. Maybe you compare yourself to them. Maybe you say, oh, their life's so interesting and mine isn't. I know I've done that. I think that constant comparison is a sad way of being and is something that it took me a while to get over when I was a teenager. I think I'm lucky because when I was a teenager, when these platforms first came out, they weren't what they are today. It's been a gradual change towards that algorithmic For You page that caters to everything that makes your heart race a little bit faster, your pupils dilate a bit more, it holds your attention a little bit more. When these platforms first came out, they were just wholesome ways to share what you'd done that day. I mean, take silly photos with silly filters and, post it to your close knit group of friends who you all know and talk to regularly. But does it feel that way anymore? No, I don't think so. It feels like that competitive contest that I spoke about when I was talking about video games. It's not a video game, but it feels somewhat like a game in terms of the comparison that you see yourself and, well, me and other people drawing to what they see online. You don't have to have a supercar and a mansion and models in every photo, but when you see others with those lives, or indeed any life that you may want, you can't help but ask why you don't have it. I think that's human nature. So when you started to go on these algorithms, they felt like a very wholesome environment. And over time, they became an environment more and more, I guess, optimized to show the best version of yourself, to filter is one word, but to promote only the highlights of your life. And it depends who you are. I mean, for everyone, you take that differently. Some people simply just do not care and they just get on with their life and it doesn't affect them. But I'm not that person. I mean, I'm better at it now. I've worked on it for years, but when I was young and these things started to feel like games, I couldn't help compare myself to others. And that drew me in further to this cycle of being hooked. Now, I mean, when I go on, I'll be crying with laughter over some like silly clip of someone doing something, but it's the way that it's put in front of you, the constant tap of the finger that makes everything so accessible. That's what's changed, and the fact that that's catered. I mean, there's teams of people with the most prestigious degrees and doctors that have entire professions based around what will keep your attention the most. Now, I think I'm lucky because when I was a boy, when I was a teenager, that wasn't pronounced. I might have found other things that I could invest and commit my time to, but that wasn't as pronounced as it is today. I think now if you're, and I can only really speak for myself, if you're a young boy, if I was the teenage me and went on these platforms now, I would find it really difficult to pull myself away from that environment and that ecosystem. I wouldn't be able to help myself but from comparing myself to others. The content that's put in front of you is, as I said, it's engineered to hold your attention the most. And I think if you're a teenager, you're not really equipped to always instill the discipline within yourself to go away and do something that maybe isn't as exciting, but will build to something in the long term. Like, would you rather go to meet your friends or sit around and rot on your phone? I mean, I know people that would much rather sit in the comfort of their home and not put themselves in a situation where they might be, some social risk, or they might not get things their way in front of them immediately catered to them. I think that's a difficult position to be in. It's a tough position to get out of. I don't know how you would focus on revising for exams when you have more entertainment than, all the great emperors and kings in our history at your fingertips. I don't know how you would do that. I know I certainly couldn't. So, okay, well, I want to be practical about it. I don't want to, just pretend like my view is only a critical one, and it's so bad for kids coming up these days, and these algorithms really hook them. I think there's an argument there, and you're seeing that with minimum age requirements being proliferated in various legal systems around the world. Specifically, schools as well are now banning devices within their premises. I think those are steps in the right direction. But you're never going to be able to take it away. I mean, you're never going to be able to police what goes on behind closed doors in people's homes. If someone wants to spend their time like consuming content on an algorithm, they will do so, right? And often you do because you're hooked. So, well, how do you get around that? It's really the only practical question. And I think this term slop, right, slop, this constant feed of slop in front of you is what you're really trying to get away from. I mean, how do you cure that or move away from that? Or how do you treat it? I think what slop is some mindless content placed in front of you to satisfy the most either hedonistic or, you know, basic emotional parts of who you are that you don't really have control over. Like they call it like the monkey brain. Like, those are the sorts of aspects of who you are that you're not necessarily conscious of that are hijacked. You can think of like, you know, placing a model in front of your screen. You would immediately be attracted to that. Your eyes would be attracted to that, or some big number, or whatever it is. The first antidote to slop is to think critically about what's in front of you. And critical thinking is mentally taxing, don't get me wrong. It's not perfect and you can't do it all the time, but if you're stuck in that loop of comparing yourself to other people, you do well to ask yourself if what you're seeing is a true representation of what the world is or what that person is. You know, does their life always look like that? Do you really need to buy a course from some investment guru in order to make sound investments? Or is the investment course itself perhaps the product? You know, do you need to fundamentally alter who you are, follow 10 steps to be a better person, or are you able to discern that for yourself? I think you can. There are countless examples of how you can think critically, but if information is put in front of you, ask yourself if it's really true. And I think that's that point about agency that I talked about. The mindless nature of slop is that you don't have to exercise any agency in consuming it, but critical thinking requires agency. You know, if you see a bit of information that sounds really alarming, that of course grabs your attention, therefore, go and do the research, go and look into it. I know it takes time, I know it's not as entertaining, and I don't do it all the time either, but it is that allows you to put a sort of realistic tone on what you see. So you start with critical thinking, but I touched on agency as well. I think that's also part of the antidote to this slop that's everywhere. It's actually taking a step back from just passively consuming things and going out and doing things, taking risks, putting yourself in situations that are out with your comfort zone. That comfort zone might be your phone. So critical thinking and doing are cures to it. These things are like muscles. They need to be trained. They are weak in the beginning, but over time you build up your ability to stop yourself from falling into holes where you maybe are not exercising that critical thought or that agency. And over time, training that muscle allows you to place blocks on doing that. There's also, I think, a degree of separation that you need to implement, not just between yourself and what you're consuming, i.e., what you're consuming does not necessarily reflect on you, but also separating the messages that you may be receiving from the person that's providing them to you or the platform that is. They call it separating the art from the artist, and I think that's part of the critical thinking required. You can learn something from everyone, but don't necessarily follow along with everything that someone says just because they are that person, or everything that's on a platform just because they are that platform. Thinking about the content of what they're saying, their principles or the information that they're presenting in a way that necessarily doesn't necessarily blindly follow them is a cure to that. So if you're in that position, like I was, where you're seeing these reflections of who you are, who you were as a teenager, and find it quite difficult to exercise discipline over what is being called mindless slop, think a bit more critically about it. Separate yourself from it and the messages from the people giving you those messages, and just practice doing things. As I said, take the risk.